So 3Bet Monkey Poker, Jonathon Augustus, and Helpful Guy all ask you about finding the right coach.
So finding the right coach can be challenging, and it's really important because you're going to be putting trust in this coach to analyze your game and to lead you down a path to improve. And if you put your trust in somebody who is either, not a very good player, not good at explaining concepts, even if they are a good player, or is somebody that doesn't really care about your progress, you end up, not just potentially wasting time and money, but regressing, or being led down a path for a long time where you're given false confidence in a strategy that is not very good. So the cost can be costly. I think that first and foremost, if you can find a way to verify their results. Obviously, if somebody's just sending you their results, there's not really a way that you can be sure that they're accurate. But if you can find a coach who is somewhat known in poker circles, somewhat trusted, and some people are public about their win-loss records. Some people play in games that are tracked or play in games that you could at least have some idea of whether the results that they're telling you they have are ballpark accurate or not. That would be ideal. And I think, so first and foremost, you want a winning player to be your coach, which kind of goes without saying. But it's the first thing I would look for. The next thing is, I think it's beneficial to hire somebody who makes training videos. First of all, because generally they're vetted by a training site for their results and for their ability to communicate concepts. But secondly, through watching their videos, you can get an idea of their teaching style and how well it fits with your learning style. I think, just myself as a video watcher, I like to learn from people who are, I'm talking about the types of training videos I want, but it does translate to the kind of coaching. So I prefer coaches who would review actual hands, and sessions and talk, or potentially live play videos where they talk about their strategy as they're making decisions. I think that a lot of coaches will, and this is actually, I think maybe I'm in the minority here, because plenty of coaches will do more theory-oriented videos where they discuss some concept. They are looking in a solver and explaining, why the solver is doing what it's doing. I find it hard to absorb concepts when I learn that way. I prefer to learn through somebody who's kind of communicating in I don't want to say more practical way, because learning from a solver is practical. And you need to study. If you're going to be an elite poker player, you need to study with the best tools there are. But I like to see somebody who is making decisions on the fly, and it's okay if they are wrong in the decisions that they make on the fly, because we're all going to be wrong sometimes. But I like to learn the kind of human logic, I guess, rather than solver logic. So that's just me. But if you're picking the right coach, you're going to want them to tell you how your coaching should look. A lot of times, it's been a long time since I've coached with any kind of regularity. I'd done some one-off things very briefly in recent years, but it's been a really long time. But when people way back when would ask me to coach, they would want they would want to send me hand histories that they had questions on, or they would want to, me to review their stats, which actually is a pretty good way to coach. But you don't want to be the one directing what you're learning. You want the coach to look at your play as a whole. So whether it's review a session of yours, look at your hand histories, look at your stats, and tell you where you need to work and where they need to teach you. Because if you're just sending hands that you have questions on, first of all, those are generally going to be hands that are pretty close, right? The hands that we contemplate the most after the fact and wonder if we were right or wrong, by definition, those are usually the ones, at least in our own mind, that were really close between two decisions. And if in reality they were close between two decisions, that means whichever one you chose, you didn't lose much expected value. So if you're sending your coach hands like that, but not sending them, oh, I just check folded flop with this hand, that should never check fold, but you don't know that it should never check fold. So they're not going to get to see that. You're not going to learn what you need to learn, where you might be making big mistakes. So if you do get a coach, make sure they're seeing your game as a whole, or at least kind of a random sampling of your game, which, if you send them a 30-minute session of you playing, that's what that is, so that they can spot the areas where you can gain the most value the most quickly. My point with that is, don't just go to any coach and say, I want to learn this way. You can tell them, how you learn best, how you think you learn best. But with a good coach, you kind of do have to leave a lot in their hands for them to point out what you need to work on and how. So verify results, training video makers, make good candidates. There are also stables, people where, groups of coaches that's specifically, they're kind of in an organization that coaches and sometimes stakes players. You can look to them. In all these cases, you should look for kind of referrals, or obviously, like, you go to a stable's website, they're going to have a testimonial saying, these are my results after. And I mean, I think most are going to be true, but if you can find something more independent, I think that would be good. But a proven coach is like a proven track record in any way, both as a player and a coach, is really valuable. And then the other thing is, I would say, avoid making a big commitment up front. You can start with a coach, and if you can do a couple hours of coaching, you can get a feel for if they're the right coach for you, if what they're saying makes sense, if you think you can trust their approach to the game and approach to coaching before you make a big commitment to them. I think that would be ideal.
Kelly Cameron wonders, how many bottles of water have you saved from going in the ocean so far?
Okay, I have to check. So I've saved 7,277 bottles of water from going to the ocean so far. Although in reality, I haven't really saved that many, because I could just be getting water out of the filtered tap in my kitchen if not for this.